Nowadays, it's hard to find someone on YouTube as influential as MoistCr1tikal. His unique form of commentary and dry humor have turned him into one of the most respected creators in the platform. And even after the commentary genre lost most of its popularity, Cr1tikal's commentary videos still managed to get millions upon millions of views. But Cr1tikal's success is no secret. In fact, there are dozens of videos on YouTube that cover what I just said in much greater detail. So it's safe to say that pretty much everyone on YouTube is aware of how successful MoistCr1tikal is. However, what no one talks about is how Cr1tikal lied and destroyed reputations in some of his videos. So that's what I'm gonna be covering today. But before I begin, there's a few things that I'd like to address. First of all, though it may seem I'm trying to defend some of the most controversial figures of this community, that is not at all what I'm trying to do. So before commenting stuff like, what about that other thing that the YouTuber did wrong, or what about all that stuff that Cr1tikal got right, please keep in mind that I'm not here to defend anyone in particular. The only point of this video is to criticize some of the things that Cr1tikal has done wrong. So please avoid leaving any comments like that, because not only are they completely and utterly pointless, but they are also counterproductive to any discussion. The second thing I want to address is that all the information in this video is publicly available and extremely easy to find. So in case you don't believe some of the things I say, I highly encourage you to go check them for yourself. So with that out of the way, if you like videos like these, please consider subscribing and sharing. Now, let's begin.
This is a video I probably should have made 2 years ago, but the person it's about is a parasite who thrives off of attention.
I probably shouldn't have done it. It was not my best moment, but I would do it again.
And then he started sharing child porn
Oh
in
my
Discord. It's
god,
been all
what
downhill
is...
since
Did
then.
you hear what he just said?
And it's not clickbait. He really eats all of that food. Very rarely does he not finish his plate.
Doesn't matter if you think it's healthy, it doesn't matter if you think it's the healthiest thing, it doesn't matter what you think. At the end of the day, you're telling people that I'm eating everything that they see on the screen. And that's inaccurate.
It was February 2021 when the YouTuber MaximilianMus, previously known for being the creator of the "Oh yeah yeah" meme, made the great mistake of raiding one of Cr1tikal's streams. Just like in any raid, Max's community would spam the chat and just be outright annoying for anyone that was watching. At some point, Cr1tikalal also got tired of the spam and made two very bold claims, which would be the catalyst for a huge drama.
There's almost nothing more embarrassing than actually watching MaximilianMus. That's
Oh,
like standing up and
he
declaring
really
yourself a
just said
pedophile. Remember when he took over YouTube for a bit? Yeah, and then he started sharing child porn in
Oh
his
my
Discord.
god,
It's been all
what is...
downhill since
Did
then.
you hear what he just said?
These statements are, needless to say, extremely shocking, and I could even add that it's weird of Cr1tikal to say them in front of 7,000 people with that amount of confidence. But I digress. Only a day later, Cr1tikalal would give a fully fleshed response to the raid, in which he made a few claims which would end up destroying Max's career. For the purpose of this video, I will only be focusing on the following. 1. Max went to a mentally ill man's stream and forced him to eat his own shit, whilst him and his community were threatening to find and kill him if he didn't do everything that Max said. 2. Max admits that the reason why he keeps remaking his Discord servers is because his community shares so much child porn that he's afraid he'll get arrested for it. 3. The reason why you can't find proof for any of this is because Max made his subreddit private and deleted all the posts that were talking about it, including his own. And 4. Cr1tikalal claims that Max used to defend child porn, saying it was just an inside joke of his community. And these statements of Max are something that Cr1tikalal claims to have seen with his own eyes. The timestamps for these quotes in Cr1tikal's video are on screen. But if you decide to watch the whole thing, you'll notice that despite his bold claims, Cr1tikalal did not double down on the statement that Max himself shared child porn. However, with that said, he never backs down on it either, and in fact, he avoids mentioning it directly, only briefly referring to it as what he said on stream, and I'll be touching on this later. Proceeding, Max's response did little to nothing to actually stop the hate that was coming from all corners of YouTube. And even if Critical's first video lacked any sort of substantial evidence for the boldest claims, it seemed like everyone had already decided, and I for one can't really blame them. I mean, seriously, who would you rather believe? A well-established and respected creator, or the guy who literally decided to put ironic memes in his response of being accused of pedophilia? Yeah, but cringe aside, after Critical posted his own counter-response, it became abundantly clear that Max's time on YouTube had come to a bitter end. Now that we're all caught up, let's start breaking down some of the accusations, starting with the claim that Max threatened the life of a mentally ill man on stream and forced him to eat his own shit. The full video of this incident is still publicly available, and although I can't really put it in the description for obvious reasons, if you do decide to watch it, you'll see that his claim was greatly exaggerated, because not only is the video in a private call and not on a stream, but also, and way more importantly, there are also no threats at any point. In his response video, Max pointed out both of these misconceptions, and even if Critical still insists that it was on stream, for some reason, he does admit that he was wrong about the threats. However though, what Critical says afterwards is what really worries me.
I was wrong to say he threatened him. He only manipulated him, which is, that's a lot better. So congratulations, Max, you're taking steps in the right direction. You only manipulated a mentally ill man into eating his own shit. Wow, that's my bad. I didn't mean to misrepresent you and slander you like that.
I mean, yes, it's obvious that treating a mentally ill man to do what he did is awful, even if it's in private. But it's not nearly as bad as making him scared for his life as he's publicly humiliated in front of his own audience. And I think this one goes without saying, but the situation that Critical described is far more traumatizing than what actually happened. But when he was confronted about his misconceptions, Critical made it seem like there wasn't a big difference, like the situation he described was pretty much what occurred, and even ironically decided to add, "Oh yeah, sorry I misrepresented you, Max," as if he didn't just completely slander him. But of course, Critical does give a justification as to why he got all of that stuff wrong. And get ready for this one. The reason why he didn't get any of those details right is because he did not even watch the fucking video.
I hadn't watched the entire stream start to finish.
Bruh.
So you're telling me that the guy went as far as to confidently say that the whole thing looked like a fucking ISIS video, his words, not mine by the way, and that Max was having his community threaten to find and kill a mentally ill man, didn't even watch the video in which all of this allegedly happened. And yes, I'm aware that Critical says he got confused because Max has shown similar behavior before, and that's entirely possible. Everyone has the right to get stuff wrong from time to time. However, how easy was that mistake to avoid? I mean, even if the video was gross and hard to see through, if he's going to comment on it, and especially use it as a source to say something extremely inflammatory about someone else, doesn't he have to at the very least watch the video? Seriously, did it not occur to him at any point that covering such a sensitive topic generates a huge reaction, and it was therefore imperative to see through the entire video before making such a statement? And the amount of confidence that Critical put in these accusations is what really worries me. Reminder, he presented these lies to his audience as if they were confirmed facts, when, in reality, not even he knew what he was talking about. But, either way, something that I find kind of curious is how he does say that Max was laughing the whole way through, which indeed happens in the video. So now I'm confused, did Critical watch the video, or did he not watch the video? I mean, whether he watched it or not is impossible to know. I personally do believe he didn't watch it and that there was really some confusion. However, my point still stands. He spread a completely outrageous lie to his millions of fans, and when he got called out for it, he avoided responsibility by pretending that it wasn't that big of a deal. But of course, if you do believe he watched the video, which is backed by the idea that he knew some of the details for something he allegedly didn't watch, then the only possible conclusion is that Critical lied on purpose to hurt Max's reputation. However, since I'm not Critical, I will not be making bold assumptions about stuff that I don't know about, and therefore, I encourage you to believe him when he says that it was all an accident and he got confused. But as you're probably aware, making everyone believe that Max threatened the life of a mentally ill man was only Critical's second most outrageous take. So, you already know what's coming ahead. Before I actually begin with this chapter, there's a point that I want to address. When I was doing my research, I had to, of course, watch many videos from different creators covering the situation. And in pretty much all of them, I saw Max and Critical fans fighting in the comment section. And in these discussions, the most common argument used by Max fans was that Critical didn't present any real evidence that Max had defended CP, which is valid criticism to Critical's first video. However, every single time that that argument came up, someone would respond with, "Well, but Max doesn't have any evidence that he didn't do it," and the unfortunate part is that people unironically agree with this argument. I mean, I thought this was pretty common knowledge, but it's not up to the accused to provide the evidence. That's the accuser's job. And that's especially true when we're talking about claims as vague as the ones that Critical makes.
And I don't know how Max handles these things these days, but back then, he used to defend it, saying that the sharing of child porn was just an inside joke of his community. Unfortunately, Max has scrubbed his entire Reddit and made it private, so all of the posts that were talking about the child porn plague that was sweeping through Maximilian's community, they're no longer there.
If Max actually had to be the one providing the evidence, like Critical fans claim, then saying that he defended child porn in the past and that he at some point deleted all the evidence would leave him with pretty much nothing to work with. I mean, how is Max even supposed to disprove that? Show every single message that he's ever sent on his Discord to prove that none of them were of him defending child porn? And if he actually managed to do that, would people accept it as proof? Or would they just claim that he deleted all the evidence anyways? It's actually kind of weird how I'm wasting my time with such a stupid point. But so many people make these arguments that I feel like one or two bums are going to comment that if I don't address it. So, I repeat, Critical, as the accuser, needs to be the one providing the evidence. And the reason why you may think otherwise is because you assume by default that Critical is telling the truth, and it's therefore up to the accused to disprove Critical's word. And I know that despite all of this, some of you will not be satisfied if I simply show how Critical never really had any evidence for the claims that he made. If that's the case for you, then I guess it's your lucky day, because the next two chapters will not only be dedicated to showing how he never had evidence, but also to how Max defending CP was a rumor that started with Critical's video and how he maliciously lied along the way. I will be using this Turkey Tom video to support some of my claims, so if you haven't watched it yet, the link will be in the description. It provides very important context, so I recommend that you see it. Now, proceeding, since Critical's first video had little to no relevant evidence against Max, I will only be focusing on his second, in which he showed 3 very important screenshots, starting with this one from Mutahar, where he essentially confirms that there was CP in Max's servers. And considering the video that I'm making, it might sound surprising to you that I actually 100% believe the contents of this screenshot. Seriously, I have no reason to believe that Mutahar is lying, and considering all the Reddit screenshots, it seems hard to deny that there were people who at some point shared illegal material in Max's Discord. However, Critical didn't just say that there was child porn at some point, or that a few people shared that type of content in Max's servers. What Critical said is that there was a huge child porn plague, and that Max publicly defended it on many occasions, which is not at all proven by the Mutahar screenshots. And in fact, the only piece of evidence that Critical presented in his first video seems to indicate that there wasn't a child porn plague, but instead that someone joined one of Max's servers and posted illegal material which led to the deletion of said Discord. And if you take a step further and start looking into other posts that date back to that event, you find that what seems to have happened was that a group of people raided Max's server and kept creating new accounts to evade bans and post CP, which led to Max eventually deleting it. And I could say that it really isn't Max's fault if a few randoms join his Discord and start posting that type of content. But why take my word for it when you can take Critical's?
Now, while you can't control every lunatic that's gonna watch your dog shit Fortnite trolling videos, you can control your response to it by banning them and making a statement saying that this shit is not okay.
So, yeah, I guess we all agree then. Some randoms posted CP in one of Max's servers, which led to him deleting it as a response. And as Critical said, Max can't really control every lunatic that joins his servers, but he can act upon them, which he did. So, I don't know, I guess there's really just not much that can be said here. Then, moving on, the next screenshot, which is the one that you're seeing on screen right now, is kind of a bizarre one. When it comes to screenshots on the internet, you should always take them with a grain of salt. But some of them are especially nonsensical. And what better way to express my point than showing you the entire timeline of events between Critical's two videos. On February 19, 2021, Critical posted his first video on MaximilianMus, accusing him of defending CP on his Discord. Just a few hours after that, Max posted a response where he said that Critical had no evidence. But one day later, around 1 PM Western European time, someone made this post on the Critical subreddit claiming they were unable to confirm that the person on the screenshot was actually Max, which was the very first time this screenshot was posted. For context, Max had apparently created a new Discord server where he invited all kinds of people, including Critical fans, and then proceeded to ping everyone to confirm that he defends CP. Later, a creator located in Canada recorded and posted the last seconds of Max's official server, and as you can see, the server was deleted at 7 PM in one of the Canadian time zones, which translated to Western European time can mean anything between 10:30 PM of the same day and 3 AM of the next day. Around the same time, Max made another response saying, once again, that Critical had no proof and that he had even fabricated some of the claims. 2 days later, Max, again, responds in a community post further emphasizing that Critical's claims were false and lacked evidence. A full month later, Max makes a more complete 24-minute long response on his main channel, once again saying how Critical had no proof and how some of the claims were false. And finally, in the same day, just a few hours later, Critical posted his own counter-response where he shows a screenshot of Max defending CP. And you may have noticed already that there's something off about his timeline. Wouldn't you consider that, out of all of Max's actions, there is an odd one out? Like how Max made 4 different responses, all claiming that Critical was lying, but at the same time created a whole Discord server and account where he invited all the Critical fans so he could admit to defending CP and pretty much confirm everything he had been trying to deny. Furthermore, I purposely said the words Max's official server because this image is not from the server that Max's community was still using. As mentioned in the timeline, this screenshot, taken in a completely different Discord, was posted at 1 PM of February 20th, while Max's official server was being used by Max up until 10:30 PM or even later. And that would therefore imply that Max, despite still having his official Discord, decided to create a brand new account and brand new server just to contradict everything he had said so far in front of all the Critical fans who were invited. And then Max, a few hours later, would post a video saying that Critical had no evidence. By now, you probably already know what I'm getting at, but I think there's no fucking way that the person in this screenshot is actually Max. I mean, even the person that posted it on Reddit said they were unable to confirm that it was actually him, and Max, in his final response video, claimed he was being impersonated.
It makes no sense at all, and the person who is impersonating me here isn't even doing it right. Look at this. This is what the actual name and picture I had, and this was 2 years ago.
Of course, some may claim that the person in this screenshot was actually Max, and I can physically prove that the person behind the keyboard wasn't actually him. But when it's impossible to confirm either side, you have to make a decision based on the information that you have. So consider the following. An account whose owner is not confirmed popped up out of the blue to specifically contradict what Max had been saying thus far, and pretty much confirmed that Critical was right about the accusations, while Max's official Discord account was still in his Discord as he tried to convince his fans that there was no evidence. So now tell me, if the person who owned this account actually had access to this account, or by other words, if this was actually Max trying to admit guilt, wouldn't it be better to do it in the Discord that he already owns? Why bother creating a whole new account and server just to admit guilt, right? I rest my case. So now, all that remains out of Critical's quote-unquote evidence is his third screenshot. And fortunately, this one is far easier to argue against, because there's a video that shows every single message that Max sent in his Discord around that time, and none of them are what Critical showed in this video. But there's something about this screenshot that is actually insane. As Critical is providing evidence that the screenshot is real, he says that there's a recording of the whole Discord before it got nuked.
This one, I can tell you it's Max because someone actually recorded the entire fucking Discord before it got nuked, where this right here, this account, was the fucking host of this goddamn Discord as well. Thus, Max's Discord. So I'll show that video real quick. Now for the skeptics out there, the people still believing in reptilians and flat earth, this may not be enough to convince you of everything I and many others have said about Max.
Wait, did you notice it? Critical says, I'll show you that video real quick, then proceeds to not show it, but the clip that does show up for 10 seconds is literally the same video that I showed you, the one that takes away all the credibility of what he's saying. Am I missing something? Because this is actually kind of unreal. How can he unironically try to use this as an argument? Let's just take a moment to truly analyze what just happened. Critical says that he's about to show a video that proves that the screenshot wasn't fake. He doesn't actually show it because, of course, the video itself proves that the screenshot was fake, and then proceeds to say that the people who still don't believe him are conspiracy theorists. Seriously, sit back and contemplate how manipulative this whole segment is. In order to mask the fact that he just purposely shared false information, he pressures the viewer into thinking that if they don't believe what he's saying, the problem is with them and not the information provided. It's the famous, if you don't believe me, then you are stupid, a technique commonly used by the great philosophers of Reddit.com. So now, let's do a small recap on the evidence that Critical presented. The first screenshot is completely beside the point, because Critical explicitly said that Max can't control every lunatic that joins his servers. The second one is unconfirmable at best, and one could argue that it's very unreasonable to say that it's real. And finally, the third one is false, and Critical knew it was false because he purposely showed a section of the video where you could briefly see the name of the account, but not that whole part where it shows the messages that Max sent in that server, which of course do not include the one in the screenshot. And a lot of people also mention this Max quote, but I honestly have a feeling that almost everyone that does it knows that they're being somewhat dishonest, because it's very easy to tell that it's just a sarcastic comment. And in cases like this, it's always predictable that some people will take it as a joke, while others will take it as genuine. But it becomes a problem when almost the entirety of Critical's fanbase decides to interpret his screenshot as an admission of guilt. What I'm trying to say here is that if these standards for understanding jokes were applied to everyone equally, then a lot of creators would be completely done for. And what better way to demonstrate my point than by showing you some of my favorite quotes from Critical's podcast. Said that like a confessing pedophile, yet again. Those 12-year-olds were soliciting me. To me, all little kids are potential targets. All children are solid 10s. The 12-year-olds hit on me first. He told a story about pissing on an underage kid. We can cut that interestingly. Out of the pedophiles in the official podcast, who is your favorite? Yeah, welcome to the official podcast, that's what we're all about. Of course, referring to the pedo jokes. And my personal favorite, this guy thinks he can out-pedo us. Yeah, I don't think this club is for you, kid. Oh crap! I guess that if we all decide to not understand sarcasm, These do look pretty bad now, don't they?
This shit's like in the anime when the villain really wants to be caught, so they just keep throwing clues out there until they eventually get caught.
Fortunately, I can tell when someone is making a joke, so I have no reason to accuse anyone of anything. All I'm doing here is asking you to be coherent, and if you tell me that this joke was bad regardless, then I 100% agree. If you watched my other videos, you know that I find this humor to be quite tasteless. And you may also remember how I took issue with some people who were just a bit too enthusiastic about his jokes. But putting it simply, in that case it was abundantly obvious that those weren't jokes at all. But as for Max, it reasonably just looks like sarcasm. This is, again, somewhat of an irrelevant point to discuss, but everyone treats this screenshot as proof, so I guess I'm somewhat forced to make a response. But now that I'm done, let's move on. Now that I've explained why Critical's evidence leaves a lot to be desired in terms of credibility, only one question remains. Was it ever true? Was there ever a child porn plague? Did Max defend it by saying it was just a joke? Or was all of this just a mere fabrication pushed by Critical? In order to answer this question, we need to pay attention to the characteristics of Critical's accusation. According to him, there was a child porn plague sweeping through Max's community during the year of 2019. Max publicly defended and pretty much endorsed the child porn by saying it was just an inside joke. He also claims that Max didn't try to hide this in any way, and was in fact very public about it, having made both written statements and video/voice recordings defending the CP. First, we can point out that other than 2021, 2019 was Max's most controversial year, as he continuously got involved in drama due to his shitty online behavior, which includes, but not limited to, mobilizing his audience to mock Whist's girlfriend after her father's passing, manipulating a mentally ill man to make him eat his own feces, and a lot, and I mean a lot, of raiding and bullying. That was also the year when Max's profile picture army took over YouTube, which turned Max into one of the most relevant creators on the website, for a few months at least. And so it seemed like for either good or bad reasons, all eyes were on Max during 2019. As an obvious consequence, Max became a popular topic in and out of YouTube, being criticized or exposed in a variety of videos, as well as being a topic of discussion in forums like Kiwi Farms, and even getting news articles written about him. So, with that in mind, it's safe to say that when Max publicly defended the CP plague, there was a general outrage and everyone talked about it in 2019 as it was happening, right? Right? Let's start with Max's interview on Tommy's channel, a great place to learn some information about Max and his 2019 drama. So, after a whole hour of confronting Max about his online behavior, is the bombshell gonna come up? Is anyone going to mention the child porn plague that he was very public about endorsing? No? Well, that's an unfortunate coincidence, right? Let's keep going. Kiwi Farms, a great website to discuss people with a less than normal online presence and archive some of their behavior. So, before Critical's video, did anyone here talk about Max defending CP? Well, not really, but maybe people on Kiwi Farms just don't care about any of that. Let's just not mention how suddenly people took interest in that topic after Critical's video came out. You're probably seeing the pattern already. But let's keep going. Look! Whist is going to investigate MaximilianMus. After all that Whist went through because of this scumbag, he's finally going to get his revenge by exposing him for being a pedophile that defends CP. I mean, Max was public about it and Whist absolutely hates his guts. So after gathering information on him, Whist is going to say the words, MaximilianMus defends CP, and he can finally rest, as he sees the guy that relentlessly harassed him and his girlfriend for months, getting what he deserves. So, surely, Whist is going to mention it because there's not a single person on the internet who would benefit more from it than Whist.
Well, I know him as a scumbag who uses his audience to harass people online.
Oh wait, never mind, he only talked about Max's targeted harassment campaigns. I really thought this was gonna be it, but fine. Moving on. Turkey Tom. He made probably the best exposed video on Max, compiling a lot of information that was already public, as well as bringing entirely new stuff to the table. But more importantly, there's a specific section of the expose where Tom entertains the possibility that Max is a pedophile. So now, the stage is perfectly set. The video was in 2019, Tom got to see Max's close circle with his own eyes, he did a lot of research on Max in order to expose him, and is about to push the idea that Max might be a pedo. Has there ever been a more perfect set of circumstances? This seems like the exact video where you would find that information. So now, does Tom mention it? Does Turkey Tom, when he's explaining why Max might be a pedo, say anything about defending CP? No, he does not. So there's something very wrong here, because it's not just Tom who decided not to mention the CP. There is not one exposed video from 2019 where people talk about Max defending child pornography. And I think this one goes without saying, but considering the amount of attention that the harassment campaigns got, there is just no way in hell that people would decide to not talk about the absolute bombshell that Critical described. And I know what your next line's gonna be. Well, but Critical said that Max deleted all the evidence, and I honestly struggle to understand how people ever believe this specific take. Because are you really ready to tell me that the guy was controversial enough to get news articles written on him, at the peak of his popularity gave an extremely vile opinion on one of the most sensitive topics out there, and somehow, despite being very public about it, managed to erase every trace of that from the internet? Sure, if by that you mean that Max deleted a few Reddit posts, then that's obviously credible. It's also entirely possible for Max to abuse the report system on YouTube in order to unfairly delete some videos. But what Critical is saying is that Max deleted every single one, and I just have no idea how that can be possible. I don't think there's any YouTuber out there that can delete every single video that mentions a bombshell like that. Also, the number of posts about Max on Kiwi farms has quadrupled since Critical talked about the CP. So if they're interested in this topic, then why are there 0 posts about that from before Critical's video? Did Max also have the power to delete stuff from Kiwi farms? Come on now, this is getting kind of ridiculous. There's simply no way that someone as controversial as Max could make a statement like that and then completely delete it from the internet. There's not a single person on the planet that could pull something like that off. And Max wasn't born with supernatural deleting powers. And it also seems irrational to say that, for example, Whist saw an opportunity to end the career of the guy who had been relentlessly bullying him for months and just decided not to take it. The only thing he had to do was talk about the CP that Max had allegedly defended, and all the harassment that was happening to him, his girlfriend, and a lot of innocent people would have ended right then and there. But instead, he only chose to talk about how Max weaponizes his audience, which was something that people already knew about. So now tell me, did Whist not want to end Max's career? Or did he just not see any of what Critical talked about when he gathered information on Max? And practically the same goes for Turkey Tom. Did he think that publicly defending CP wasn't a relevant addition to a video where he talks about why Max is possibly a pedo? Or did Tom also not find anything about Max defending CP, despite the fact that according to Critical that wasn't really a secret in 2019? The reality is, if Max had defended CP, then a lot of people would benefit from mentioning that. And yet, it seems impossible to find anyone that actually did. While on the other hand, finding proof for the rest of the accusations that Critical made is extremely easy, because you can very quickly find either a YouTube video, a forum post, or maybe even just a random conversation from 2019 where people mention the accusation. But for the claim that would generate by far the biggest reaction, the proof is just nowhere to be seen. Furthermore, the Reddit posts from 2019 that were previously mentioned all talk about how Max deleted his server because it was raided by people who were posting CP, and notice the way in which they talk about what happened. Does this seem like the people in this conversation are used to seeing that type of content in Max's servers, or does it seem like an exception which, as previously mentioned, was dealt with by Max? And I don't think I need to tell you this, but Max taking action against people who post CP isn't remotely comparable with the idea that he endorses that type of content. And moreover, if his own community posted a lot of child porn, what would be the point of raiding Max's server with that? Would people even realize there was a raid happening? Because from what Critical described, it would just look like any other day in Max's servers. Then, what's going on? Critical's accusation, how he described it, implies that evidence for Max defending CP should be relatively easy to get. However, while it seems impossible to obtain any of that, it's almost ironically extremely easy to find proof that contradicts the claims. By this point, it would literally make more sense to say that Max defending CP was an obscure secret that only Critical seemed to know about, because otherwise, and I can't stress this enough, the complete lack of evidence is an absurd phenomenon that needs to be studied. So in that case, what can be made of Critical's accusations? Because everything seems to indicate that they're simply not true, and the only reasons I can find to believe the child porn claims are 1. Max is a weirdo degenerate, so I guess it would kind of make sense, and 2. Critical said so and I choose to believe him, which was what pretty much everyone did from the beginning. And I already talked about Critical's second video and the alleged proof, but even after his first video on Max in which he pretty much just said, "It's true but he deleted everything so you'll have to trust me," people still took the accusations as confirmed facts. I get that it's totally normal for people to want to side with their favorite creator, especially when the alternative is a human shit stain like Max. But sometimes, we have to try to be objective and look at the story from many different angles in order to see the whole picture. And the fact is, the more you look at it, the worse Critical side of the story becomes. Because, as you may remember, when he was talking about his screenshots, he only showed a small section of the video that allegedly proved his authenticity, but purposely omitted the part that completely contradicted what he was saying, and that definitely puts Critical's character into question. Because one thing is sharing a fake story potentially on accident, but knowingly omitting information like that is straight up pushing a false narrative on purpose. And if you're okay with that, just because it came from your favorite creator, then what makes you any less delusional than the average Max fan? And since we're on the topic of pushing fake narratives, it seems like a good time to remind you of a lie so outrageous that Critical doesn't want anything to do with it. And even when the topic comes up, only refers to the lie as the thing he said. And you may have guessed it already, but I'm of course talking about the time when Critical accused Max of distribution of child pornography live to thousands of people.
Remember when he took over YouTube for a bit? Yeah, and then he started sharing child porn in
Oh
his
my
Discord.
god,
Been all
what
downhill
is...
since
Did
then.
you hear what he just said?
So, about 30 minutes later in the stream, he does clarify that he meant to say that Max's community shares child porn. But here's the catch. While the clip of the raid, where Critical accused Max of distributing CP, got extremely popular, the clip of him correcting the accusation got no attention at all. So now, there's a problem because people are running with a completely false, life-ruining accusation and using Critical as a source. And when it comes to a claim that serious, it's important that Critical at least make some sort of effort to make sure that those people know that he misspoke, considering that the vast majority of the people who saw the accusation did not watch the entire stream. But it seems like all the confidence that went to making a false crime accusation live wasn't quite there when it was time to properly address the topic, because Critical didn't even seem to want to remind anyone of what he actually said.
Like, here's what he said in his Discord after I said what I said on stream.
I mean, saying it like that can make the story rather vague and confusing. So, just so we're all on the same page, let's all, one more time, relive the moment when Critical said what he said on stream.
Remember when he took over YouTube for a bit? Yeah, and then he started sharing child porn in
Oh
his
my
Discord.
god,
Been all
what
downhill
is...
since
Did
then.
you hear what he just said?
And now that we have proper context, let's rewrite Critical sentence to make it a bit less confusing. Critical stated, here's what he said after I said what I said on stream. But a more informative way to express this point would be, here's what he said after I falsely accused him of distribution of child pornography on stream. And see how that very slight change has given us all a new perspective on the situation. But all jokes aside, the only thing that Critical had to do was talk about how he accidentally misspoke on stream and how the claim was false. And that would have been completely acceptable. But even when the fake crime accusation is important context to the point that he's making, Critical just won't talk about it. And these aren't random accusations that you'd expect to see in an average YouTube drama. This is the kind of stuff that ruins people's lives. So it's extremely important to make sure you know what you're talking about before making claims as heavy as that. But not only does all the evidence indicate that Max defending CP was a narrative that only started with Critical's video, but he also lied on purpose and allowed people to run with false accusations that he made during the whole saga. And that's what truly separates random cases of accidental misinformation from what Critical did. As I said, everyone has the right to get stuff wrong from time to time, but the way that Critical ran this narrative was dishonest almost from the very beginning. And I'm sure that even the biggest Critical fans out there can recognize that what he did was completely immoral. Because even Critical recognizes that.
They were no longer allegations, all of it was presented as facts. This was as real as algebra now. Like, those aren't goofy little silly accusations. That's not something you toss out willy-nilly like a fucking baseball. That can ruin your life. That will sink you. And people just ran with it. Didn't ask questions, didn't care to hear Quite's side of anything. Everything Quite did, they criticized. Like, I think he took down his Discord server and they took that as a deeper admission of guilt.
So, if I read this right, what Critical is telling me is that this situation was horrible because an accuser decided to make life-ruining false allegations and the whole community just started throwing labels around without wanting to hear the other side of the story. And isn't that such an interesting perspective? I mean, I truly wasn't quite sure if what Critical had done was morally reprehensible or not. But then I heard his lecture on how you have to be careful with life-ruining accusations, and how it was wrong of everyone to jump on a bandwagon when there wasn't nearly enough proof. So now, I can confidently confirm that by Critical's very own standards, what he did was pretty damn shitty.
And if you said, like, hey, maybe let's wait to hear from the other side for a moment, you would have been labeled evil. Max didn't do anything that you say that was kind of defamation. So you're 14, I'm guessing. That can ruin your life. That will sink you. And people just ran with it. Remember when he took over YouTube for a bit? Yeah, and then he started sharing child porn in his Discord. Like, those aren't goofy little silly accusations. That's not something you toss out willy-nilly like a fucking baseball. He was threatening and having his community threaten to find and kill him if he didn't do everything Max said. It's like watching a fucking ISIS video. Like, those fucking losers grind my ass so hard because it's clear you don't care about the truth, you just want somebody to hate. This one, I can tell you it's Max because someone actually recorded the entire fucking Discord before it got nuked, where this right here, this account, was the fucking host of this goddamn Discord as well. Thus, Max's Discord. So I'll show that video real quick. He calls it that YouTube shit. He doesn't even say what he did and what he, like, is guilty of. He just loosely refers to it vaguely and brushes it off quickly. That is the opposite of taking accountability. He doesn't even fucking address it directly. Like, here's what he said in his Discord after I said what I said on stream.
Of course, a lot of people will argue that comparing Max's case to Quite's isn't really fair because unlike Max, Quite wasn't a complete piece of shit. And I definitely agree with that. But we're not talking about who's on the receiving end. We're talking about the action in itself. And I think it's very reasonable to say that running with false narratives that ruins people's lives isn't great practice. I really don't feel all that bad for Max, and definitely don't want him back on YouTube considering most of what is done online. But, with that said, I'm a firm believer that people deserve to get judged for what they did, not for what they didn't do. If Max had been outed because he harassed people, manipulated a mentally ill man to make him eat his own shit, or for the predatory behavior that is described in Turkey Tom's video, then I wouldn't have cared in the slightest, because that would have just been completely fair. Max is truly the perfect example of what happens when you give an audience to the wrong person, and to say that he's in any way the biggest victim in this whole story is completely and utterly delusional. But we can't just pretend that what Critical did was okay. The defending CP accusation that he pushed was always poorly substantiated, full of holes in its story, and supported by fabricated evidence. And furthermore, Critical tried to avoid responsibility for the things he knows he did wrong by, for example, pretending that falsely accusing Max of threatening to kill a mentally ill man wasn't that big of a deal, or by refusing to mention the false crime accusation that he made live, which was, mind you, completely life-ruining. It's undeniable that in many ways, it was great that Critical brought more attention to how shitty of a person Max is, but that should have never given him the right to lie about topics like that. I truly think that Max's case really encapsulates how dishonest and reckless Critical can be. But this video isn't exclusively about Max, so let's start talking about the pattern of behavior. I just want to start this chapter by stating that it will no longer focus on life-ruining accusations, but it will instead be a brief overview of various examples of Critical lying about creators, often presumably on accident, but sometimes blatantly on purpose. And we don't have to look very far to find our first example, as during the Max saga, a creator called Crows of Judgement made a video calling Critical out for not presenting evidence substantial enough to accuse Max of defending child pornography, insisting that Critical should have at least been able to show a screenshot of such. And of course, some people may misinterpret this point by thinking that Crows was implying that Critical had to show CP in order to back the accusation, which is obviously stupid because broadcasting CP is a crime. So, in order to make sure everyone was on the same page, Crows made it abundantly clear that he was not at all implying that, and that instead, what Critical had to do was show a screenshot of Max defending CP.
Now, there's gonna be some asshole with the biggest fucking highest IQ out there that's gonna say, Crow is asking him to show CP. No, I'm asking you to show me a fucking statement by MaximilianMus in which he defends CP and says it's just a fucking joke and it's totally okay on his server.
I don't think that Crows could have been any more clear. He very explicitly said that what Critical had to do was show a statement of Max defending CP and not the CP itself, and even went as far as emphasizing how stupid it was to suggest otherwise. Now, considering that Crows was a major part of Max's response, Critical decided to acknowledge him as the guy fighting Max's battles, and then proceeded to claim that Crows was demanding to see the child porn, as that was, according to him, the only way to prove that Max had defended CP.
And he calls all of this into question because I didn't fucking show the child porn. The guy makes it seem like the only way he'd believe the accusations is if I just fucking played child porn in my video to prove that it was Max's child porn. Like, what? Like, how fucking dumb do you have to be to demand to see the child porn? It's a crime. You can't fucking do that. What I can do is show you how he'd respond to the child porn that was shown in there and prove to you that it existed, which I will do. I'm not gonna fucking show child porn, you goddamn troglodyte idiots. These fucking dummies were saying, well, Charlie didn't broadcast CP on YouTube, thus this can't possibly be a true story. Like, you have to have negative fucking brain. Like, you have to have stupid brain to think that that's the only way to prove the existence of these things. It's crazy.
Did Critical watch an alternative version of Max's response? I mean, surely he must have watched a different video where Crows demands to see the child porn, because otherwise, I have no clue where he got this information from. There's literally nothing in the video that even suggests those points. And Crows was in fact very explicit about the exact opposite. Seriously, is there even a point in debating whether he lied on purpose or not? Because I'm not sure if it's possible for someone to misinterpret something which had no room for interpretation. Literally, Just go watch Max's response and see how clear Crows was about the fact that Critical had to show a statement and not actual child porn. If you watch that video and then rewatch what Critical said, you'll understand that the idea that he didn't lie on purpose is pure delusion. And furthermore, did he really have to call Crows a dumbass in like 20 different ways? Was lying about him not enough? Did Critical really have to use the lie he had just created in his head to call the guy a troglodyte idiot? The lie already discredited him enough. Why even go the extra mile?
Is there any level of shame?
The next example I'm gonna bring up is of Critical's drama with a creator called DarkViperAU. If you're not up to speed, in February 2022, DarkViper made a document explaining why he thinks that streamers/YouTubers who do reaction content are bad people. Putting it simply, he explains that if we didn't spend time watching reaction content, which is essentially stolen, we would watch original content, which has effort. And while big reaction creators are making millions of dollars every year, there are tons of channels that don't kick off at all that could be getting attention. Furthermore, he also criticized how reaction channels avoid responsibility when they get called out for this, by saying that they weren't explicitly told that they couldn't steal other people's videos. So then he proceeds to compare the idea that a reaction channel has of consent to that of a sex offender, making analogies like, quote, "If you meet a reactor at a party, I suggest covering your glass or outright telling them not to fuck you, because they seem keen on taking other people's silence for consent," which is poor phrasing to say the least. And the fact that he doubled down on this statement on Twitter didn't help him either. It's undeniable that the sex offenders bit was unnecessary. But as a whole, the document pretty much hits the nail on the issues most of us have with reaction content. While Critical's response, on the other hand, manages to completely miss the point. For example, at 4 minutes and 27 seconds, he makes a parody out of the idea that reaction content is bad, but then proceeds to explain what DarkViper is actually saying in his document.
I wonder how many small channels are out there shaking their fist right now like, "Damn you, Pokimane, my channel died because you watched my video on your stream and said nice things about me. I had such a promising career as a YouTuber till you said nice things about my video on stream to your audience of 30,000 concurrent viewers. Now I'm fucking trashed. I'm ruined." And to be fair, that's not the exact point he's making. His point of how they're killing small channels is because they're taking eyes away from small channels to their own channel.
Okay, so he recognizes that what DarkViper is trying to say is that if people didn't watch reaction streamers, they would be watching other content which would benefit channels that make something original. And he also recognizes that DarkViper was not making the point that reaction content can't help small channels, because his document is very clear about the idea that the person who made the original video does get something out of it. And with that in mind, does Critical spend the majority of the video tackling the idea which he recognized to be DarkViper's point, or does he spend nearly the entirety of the runtime pretty much responding to the strawman that he himself made? Yeah, he spent most of the video responding to the strawman. I mean, I literally don't get it. The whole document clearly talks about how the exposure is stolen from the original creators, and Critical addresses that point. But for some reason, decides to hyperfixate on one sentence in a 14-page document that says that reaction channels usually don't seek small videos to react to, and makes it seem like the whole thing was mostly about how reaction channels are trying to fuck small creators over, which would obviously be a stupid opinion.
DarkViper's entire document here is about this belief that every reactor is doing it for financial gain and to fuck small channels.
Moreover, he also twists the consent point to make it seem like DarkViper ever said that Critical was on the same level as a rapist.
You used to watch my shit, and I have always reacted to content even since 2016. So you knew I was doing all of that and you still enjoyed the content. Now all of a sudden you're coming in here and putting me on the same level as a fucking rapist, man. It's absolutely outrageous.
And although I believe that Critical misinterpreted most of the document on accident, I think he decided to phrase some things in a very specific way in order to push a narrative. For example, I don't think there's any angle from which you can look at the document to get the idea that Dark Viper said that reaction creators are trying to fuck small channels on purpose. That's literally an idea that Critical created out of thin air, which perfectly fits the narrative that Dark Viper lost his head and was speaking complete nonsense to hurt reaction channels, which was one of the ideas that Critical was trying to get across in his response video. And this is a pattern that has happened many times with him. It usually starts when a creator makes a valid point against Critical, so then he proceeds to, purposely or not, completely twist it to something that sounds very irrational. And then, he either outright says the person in question was stupid for making the point that they never made to begin with, or he implies that they were being malicious or that they have no clue what they're talking about, among other possibilities. And Crow's of Judgment's case, that I just talked about, perfectly falls under this. Crows very explicitly said that Critical should be able to show a statement of Max defending CP, otherwise his accusations were likely false. Critical looked at that point and thought, nah, fuck that shit, and then claimed that what Crows actually said was that he had to broadcast CP in order to prove anything, thus twisting the argument, and then finished his point with, and Crows is a fucking dumbass because he said that. And there's a bunch of other cases like this. For example, there's a video by a creator called Sid Dwyer that covers a couple of examples where Critical also seems to twist a criticism that was aimed towards him in order to discredit the people that he lied about. I was originally going to talk about this in some detail, but I figured that I didn't have too much to add to what Sid himself said, so I'm gonna put a link in the description and quickly summarize it. Basically, Critical's videos on both Nikocado Avocado and Death Noodles were full of misinformation that Critical either forged out of thin air or just saw in a Twitter post and didn't bother checking if it was true. Moreover, when Nikocado responded to the misinformation, Critical made it seem like he was doing that for drama quicks, when in reality, Nick had all the right to be upset about some of what Critical said. For example, there's a part where Critical insists that Nick eats all the food that you can see in the thumbnails, which is not true, but makes Nick look more irresponsible, therefore unfairly hurting his reputation, and Critical also corroborates that statement with the following sentence. For almost the last 4 years, almost every day, he had done mukbangs like this where he eats 6 pizzas, 8 pizzas. He'll get like fucking McDonald's, and he'll order everything off the menu and then ask if they can just tilt the grill over to get a little extra grease in a cup for him to drink on camera. So, I find it kind of unfair when Critical says that Nick's response is to capitalize off of drama quicks, because there were definitely plenty of reasons for him to be upset. These lies don't need to be on a massive scale to hurt creators. Lies that make them look stupid, more irresponsible, or just more unlikable in general are something that Critical should avoid as they generate a toxic reaction from his community. And the thing is, he seems to want to avoid them, because in some cases he did attempt to set the record straight and admit he was wrong about some parts. But a lot of this could have been completely prevented if his research went beyond Twitter posts and cryptic dreams. And we also can't ignore the fact that there's occasions where it seems completely undeniable that Critical lied on purpose to push some sort of narrative that favored his case. I could have really made these cases the focus of my video, because covering a variety of examples in detail would have been a good approach to carry my point. However, one of the reasons why I chose to make this video mostly about the MaximilianMus case is because it's an almost perfect culmination of all these issues in full scale. What happens when a guy who can't be bothered to do any research starts talking about serious topics instead of just random drama? Well, what happens is that he starts throwing false accusations about threatening to kill mentally ill people, because it seemed true and he didn't want to go through the trouble of checking. What if the guy has also shown to be purposefully dishonest? Well, in that case, he starts omitting evidence that contradicts his points and refusing to give context that would make what he's saying invalid. All of these issues that Critical has shown for various creators translate perfectly to the MaximilianMus case. He's shown to be dishonest on various occasions, ranging from slightly twisting what creators say in order to push a narrative, to outright putting words in their mouths and completely lying about them. Max's case is just another example that falls into these categories, as well as the fact that not doing research about the mentally ill man thing is not an isolated event. It's something that Critical keeps doing, even after it goes wrong time and time again. The difference is that in this scenario he's not talking about how many pizzas Nikocado Avocado eats, or if the people at the Death Noodles comedy show actually knew each other. He's talking about something that he needed to be informed about before speaking. And when all of these cases generate a toxic reaction from his community and are really easy to avoid, I think it becomes important for Critical to put more effort into researching the things that he's saying. Especially considering how vocal he is about not wanting creators to get harassment because of him. Which brings me to my next point. An inevitable byproduct of making a video criticizing someone is that some of the people who watch it will attack the person being criticized. No matter how much you try to avoid that, there will always be people who want to spread some toxicity online. And in most cases, there's really no point in trying to blame the creator of the video. But what if the video in question was full of misinformation that makes the person being criticized look way more unlikable? Would some responsibility fall under the creator then? As most of us know, Critical has always been very vocal about hating when his community sends harassment to creators he talks about. And that's honestly extremely respectable. While a lot of people on YouTube don't even make any sort of effort to prevent their communities from going rampant on other people's comment sections, Critical has 2 videos completely dedicated to telling his fans to not attack the people he covers. And that definitely reduces the problem. However though, it's hard to ignore the fact that the misinformation in Critical's videos is completely counterproductive to that cause. The reality is, the response from the community will reflect the video. The more negatively someone is portrayed, the more negative the comments will be. So it becomes somewhat of an issue when the person being criticized is unfairly portrayed. For example, in the Nikocado Avocado video, Critical claims that Nikocado eats 6 to 8 pizzas per day or something equivalent to that, which is a huge exaggeration that makes Nick look unrealistically irresponsible and desperate for internet views. He also follows up that statement by making a hyperbole about how Nikocado would go to McDonald's to order everything off the menu and then ask the employees to tilt the grill over so he can drink the grease on camera. Thus, I don't really think it's a coincidence when the comment section looks like this. Bro, don't mean to hate, but watching you is like watching a pig having a seizure. Might be the most pathetic excuse for a human being. Please stop. When your arteries are so clogged it starts to cut off circulation to your brain. You don't identify as skinny. You identify as a fat fuck! Although I could spend 5 more minutes reading hostile comments, I think the point is already across. And you can check the other videos that Nick made around that time, and none of them have a comment section nearly as toxic as this. Although Critical can really grab these people by the neck and force them to stop being weirdos on the internet, he could dedicate more time into doing research about the people he talks about, because that would most definitely decrease the problem. And I really don't think there's any reason to doubt that Critical hates when his community acts like this. But if there's a variety of instances of him sharing misinformation about people due to lack of research, then he should dedicate more time to that considering how vocal he is about this topic. On the other hand, I'm not sure if there's a point in debating whether some responsibility falls on him when the creators he lied about on purpose, like Rose of Judgement for example, get hate. And I found it kind of ironic how Critical said that Crows was fighting Max's battles for him with a negative connotation, when the only reason why he gets away with blatantly lying is because his community will literally fight every battle for him. I mean, was Critical telling the truth about Crows? No, not really. But will Critical fans call Crows a pedophile in the comments? You can bet your ass they will. The fact is, Critical has a dedicated stan base that always defends him no matter what. And a great example that demonstrates my point is this video that I found where a guy just shows raw clips of Critical lying about Crows. The video contains no commentary at all, just raw clips, and yet it has more dislikes than likes, which means that Critical stans watched the video, recognized that it meant that Critical was lying, and then literally got pissed off at the conclusion that they reached by themselves. And there's of course some people mad in the comments saying that the video is bad and that Critical didn't lie, and I'm really sorry to inform you. But the video doesn't say anything about lying. You're just mad at the clips because, let's be honest, You know what they mean. This is not Critical's fault, and every fanbase has toxic and delusional people. But I still feel like it's important to address this, because there's just a small group of losers that go beyond anything reasonable to defend someone that will never talk to them. I mean, we can all agree that Max is a terrible human being that probably shouldn't be allowed on YouTube. But do you really have to go to his comment section and encourage him to off himself? That literally doesn't help anyone. It's just weirdo behavior. And remember when after Critical's first video on Max, people tried to dox him, but instead doxed a completely innocent guy that had nothing to do with it. They really just looked at the first Maximilian they could find in Sweden and started posting all his information online, even though no one ever asked them to be the heroes of the story. And I know there will definitely be people who will not like this video. There will be people that will look at the evidence and pretend it's not there. But if there's anything that you should take from it, is to not be like these weirdos. You don't have to go above and beyond to attack people that Critical portrays negatively. Believe it or not, calling Nikocado a pig or telling Max to off himself doesn't actually solve anything. It just makes you look like a fucking loser. But anyways, these are all the main topics I wanted to talk about. But here's a small appendix of things that didn't quite fit in the video because they're not really that relevant. So, for starters, some people are going to say that there's more evidence for Max defending CP outside of Critical's videos. But as far as I know, all of them are just witnesses whose affiliation with Max can't really be confirmed. So it's basically just randoms on the internet, and anyone can pretend that they were close to Max and that they saw him defending CP, but there isn't actual proof. Secondly, due to the Reddit API changes, looking for stuff on Reddit became a complete nightmare, and I wanted to use a higher variety of screenshots from both the Max and Critical subreddits, but the policies literally changed mid-research, so yeah, I kinda got screwed over. And lastly, I want to say that I'm not going to force you to agree with everything I said. For example, when I called something outrageous or immoral, that was merely my opinion. But I honestly don't think there's really grounds to argue with the idea that Critical is dishonest. Keep in mind that the vast majority of the video has been me documenting public information. There's definitely parts in which I'm interpreting it, but even if you were to remove all the interpretation and just looked at the raw info, the conclusion would still be that Critical is dishonest. And as I said, his stands don't even care about information they can see for themselves. But a quick reminder that even if you close your eyes and cover your ears, the info will still be there. This has been the truth about MoistCr1tikal. Please try to keep it civil in the comment section. Be sure to share the video, subscribe and leave a like if you enjoyed. Thanks for watching.